Good evening. My name is Mitzi Harding. I will be presenting to you the results of an argumentative research essay that I completed. My thesis is, though the founding fathers and framers of the Constitution formed a republic on a foundational declaration acknowledging all men are created equal, a careful examination of historical events will show the United States has consistently and strategically employed systems of polarization to create and maintain its power structure of the elitism while explicitly and implicitly disenfranchising the masses. This presentation begins by establishing polarization as systems working together. As such, we understand for the purposes of this argument, polarization is determined to be a set of mechanisms interconnected to form a network to influence, control, and subjugate. Thus, if this position is accepted for the sake of this argument, it can also be said the concept or plan of polarization, by its meaning, is never employed to bring you unity, compromise, or equality. Therefore, the agency of polarization is expressed in the former statement rather than the latter. Now that the perspective of the argument has been identified, the focus is to examine historical events while pinpointing direct correlations to periods in which systems of polarization were employed to benefit the elite while disenfranchising the masses. Systems of polarization are in the fine print of the Constitution of the United States, which is the blueprint for governance in the nation. Before we take a look at the historical events, it is proper to take a look at the profile of the people who wrote the Constitution. As a matter of fact, practically all of the men who wrote the Constitution were exclusively white. They were wealthy landowners, and many, if not all, were slave owners. Of the 55 delegates to the Constitutional Convention, 17 of 55 of those delegates actually owned a total of approximately 1,400 slaves. And as a matter of fact, of the first 12 presidents, 8 of them were slave owners. This information was retrieved from an article titled, "How Should We Judge Our Nation's Founders?" As we can see, this profile certainly fits that of elitism, the demographics, the age, the gender, the religion, ethnicity, so forth and so on. The next step is to examine the extent and the motives of the founding fathers to incorporate systems of polarization into the Constitution to preserve their power structure for their generations. In addition, we uncover a nexus between the agency of polarization and the creation of systems of polarization, which was defined previously as intended to influence, control, and subjugate. The obvious conflict of interest is the first piece of evidence. The founding fathers' personal and financial interests compromised and conflicted with their judgments. Thomas Jefferson, who was the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, was in fact a slave owner. He actually wrote in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence these following words: "All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Many of the same men who signed the Declaration of Independence also signed the Constitution. This is extremely important because the meaning of declaration is profoundly different from the meaning of Constitution. A declaration is merely an announcement, while a constitution is a set of principles by which an organization is actually governed. Not only is there clear evidence of a conflict of interest between the creators and the content, But the next step will also present evidence of conflicts between the actual two foundational documents, meaning the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Let's start by taking a look at Article 1, Section 2 in the United States Constitution, which says the following: representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among several states which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. This legal precedent births the creation of systems of polarization. It makes a distinction between who is considered a number of free persons and who is considered 3/5 of all other persons. So there is a separation. There is a polarization. This is critical because systems of polarization are often stealthily constructed for political correctness. Therefore, systems of polarization often incorporate different strategies and techniques to effectively accomplish the goal. In this case, the tool of polarization first employed an explicit technique characteristic in systems of polarization in which a legal precedent gives legitimacy to the goal of separation, thereby creating levels of humanity to maintain the power structure. We have, on the one hand, white men are called men. On the other hand, we have slaves or Black Americans who were in fact categorized as 3/5 of men. This is extremely important. How? This language is decidedly implicit by design. The declaration is that all men are created equal. It is important to understand and note that women and Native Americans were not included. But you also see the constituting of the legality of the term of men when it comes to the situation, because it automatically excludes African Americans. Othering is another tool in systems of polarization. This serves to create a constant subculture. We saw this in what happened to the Japanese Americans. During World War II, Japanese Americans were sent to labor camps. They were ostracized. They were made fun of. And this was all a part of the system of polarization. As a matter of fact, the president at the time sent forth an order ordering that Japanese Americans would in fact be sent to these internment camps under the premise that it would be a way to mitigate or stop any possible insurgency by Japanese American citizens who were born here in America. This was all done without due process. As a matter of fact, a lot of the businesses and homes that were taken from them were never given back. They were in fact gentrified. Black Americans also experienced a lot of polarization after World War II. It is ironic that African Americans went abroad to fight for the freedoms of other countries, only to come back and face inequality here because of systems of polarization, separate but equal. Now, I do acknowledge other perspectives concerning political polarization in America. As a matter of fact, there are two authors that wrote an article titled Polarization in America, Two Possible Futures. Their names are Gordon Heltel and Kristen Lauren, and they're affiliated with the University of British Columbia. They posit that small amounts of political polarization resulting in separation and clustering is good for democracy. For example, they contend that political polarization helps to maintain multiple options through civil engagement to which the outcomes reflect and compromise and produce optimal solutions, while representing and reflecting the consensus of society. Well, while I do acknowledge these statements, I will contend that small amounts of polarization can never be misconstrued or misunderstood with what is called a social contract. In a social contract, actors and agents agree within society to act civilly towards one another to create compromise and commitment. It is my position that instead of quote unquote these small amounts of polarization, what we actually see in many instances is the idealism of the social contract. Because polarization by its definition does not bring about community. It does not bring about unity. Polarization separates. I also would like to say there's another perspective from yet another expert in the field. His name is Andreas Shedler. He's a political science professor at the Center for Economic Teaching and Research. The name of his article is Rethinking Political Polarization. He really digs into the origin and the historical meaning of the word of polarization all the way back to the 1800s. I really do appreciate this particular article in that it helps to solidify the fact that systems of polarization are nothing new. It is woven in the fabric of America. I will also say that this presentation does not seek to analyze the use of polarization from those subgroups such as Black Lives Matter or the LGBTQ plus community for reasons stated above. It is my position that those systems of polarization are unique to the dominant group who has the power and the means to deploy tools successfully. And again, I would state again that Black Lives Matter and groups like that actually create groups in order to address the systems of polarization, to address the systems in which they feel that they are not included. We see manifestations of systems of polarization today. The power struggle is seen in politics at every level and branch of government. Gerrymandering to influence and control the electorate. Congress is at a stalemate because we have gone well beyond ideological polarization, where there is a difference in decisions about policies, to a spiraling even beyond effective polarization, which is the distrust of anything or anyone outside of your group. We have such vitriol that has escalated to violence. The masses have no real facts and information because misinformation is exacerbated by social media. There is a power struggle in the United States that is rapidly dwindling out of control to the degree that we now are redefining history. The narratives are changing. We're being taught that slavery was actually beneficial. The Electoral College can be challenged and thrown out if the results do not align with maintaining the power structure. On January 6, 2021, the world witnessed an attempted insurrection because Joe Biden won both the popular and the electoral vote. The consensus of scholarship must be built to clearly define and understand the meaning of polarization in order to combat and mitigate its effects. Polarization is not autonomous by nature. Rather, it is actively employed in continuum and until the desired goals are reached or there is some type of intervention. We see history repeating itself, and we can point to the specific components to identify the shifts in power, the struggle to maintain the power struggle, and the manifestation of the systems of polarization. We must employ ideals of social contract to include diversity of thought, a seat at the table where the decisions are made, and one voice, one vote to continue the democracy of the United States. Thank you for your time.